Welcome, everybody, to our Monday night empowerment session where we will be discussing Adaptable. And I kind of like this little tagline I came up with, which was making life manageable again. And I was looking at that again today because I wrote this and put this together a week ago. And I was just thinking how true this is. And I'm excited to share some of these basics about this formula and some of the testimonies that we've got tied to it. And for those of you who are unaware and would like to, I have an option for a text messaging service where you can text the word learn to 1-866-256-1970. You'll see it there on the left-hand side of your screen. And then you will get a text alert about 15 minutes before the presentation begins, which has a direct link to this, which will also allow you to watch right off your phone. That way we can keep you in the loop and hopefully always have you joining us. All right, let's jump in and get started. And we'll start right off with hearing what Miss Rachel has to say.
Okay, so why do I love Adaptable so much? Well, I will tell you that I have struggled with severe depression and anxiety for as long as I can remember. And I'm not going to go into all my story, but let's just say I've had some major struggles with mental, emotional, and physical health. And Soul came in and just changed everything that I have been so desperate to change. And Adaptable was one of those that was a key component of that program for me. Adaptable, it changed how I felt. All of a sudden, I felt like the clouds were gone. I could think clearly. Because of my depression and all of my imbalances, I also turned to other things to numb out, including alcohol. And when you give your brain, your body, everything that it needs, things start to change. And that's what happened to me. All of a sudden, I didn't feel I needed to numb out on anything. I felt that happiness, that peace, that calm, and Adaptable was a huge factor in that. So the way I feel is everybody should be taking Adaptable. Young, older, teenagers. This is a standalone product, but absolutely should be added to a program so that you can get the best results possible. And remember, it's about mind and body balance. So Adaptable does that, and it is amazing, and it will change your life just like it changed mine.
I was so glad that Rachel provided this testimony for us because she has had such a profound change in her life as a result of the Soul products, and Adaptable being one of the main ones that have done it. And I've seen other people have similar, absolutely life-changing experiences on this product. And for those of you that aren't familiar, this is the product that started it all with helping to bring Soul to us when Greg created this formula for his wife. So I'm excited to share more about this. So let's talk about Adaptable in general. What does it do? What is it designed for? So regardless, it helps to deal with stress, helping you overcome with stress. And Adaptable does have 6 adaptogens, and adaptogens are renowned for their ability to helping the body have more resilience from stress, so that it can normalize more quickly and we don't have such extreme highs or lows in the body's response for that. And kind of like Rachel said, I am a believer that everyone can benefit from the adaptogens, whether it's the Adaptable product or we have the same 6 adaptogens in the Adaptable or also in the Vital. I have used this product on grandchildren when they were like 2 years old. No concerns. And I've used it on people in their 90s. I've used it on people that have extreme health conditions, and then just the average person who want to maintain and be proactive with their health, or the athlete that wanted to help the stress of all the training or their competitions not wear on them so much. People often tell me, well, I don't have as much stress as you have or you've dealt with it. That doesn't matter. Stress is stress and the body still has to deal with it. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we have stress on a daily basis. It's a rare person that truly has no stress in their life. So what else does this formula work with? As we heard from Rachel, it's very good for working with depression. And then there is a little bit of St. John's wort in it as well that helps the body to combat this issue. When you load the body up with adaptogens, people are amazed. In fact, I've had people reach out to me saying, are you sure there's no like caffeine or anything in here that could create the energy? It's not, it's the adaptogens. They do give endurance. They help the body to just move forward. And again, with like this sustained energy it talks about. And it also is immunomodulatory. All the adaptogens are. And because that is the primary components in this formula, you will help find that it balances all the systems out. And also helping to elevate mood and balance the mood. So let's look at Jiaogulan. This is one of the 6 adaptogens in here. It almost looks kind of like some plants we might see here in the States, although this is a plant that originates out of Asia. It is, and I've just picked a couple main components for each of these because I wanted a general overview for her. So it has very good cardiovascular support. And we're going to find that this is important with some of the other things it's known for. One is blood pressure support. So helping to regulate and bring that blood pressure into range. And I've had many people, my husband is one of them, that with the adaptogens in the Adaptable and the Vital was able to normalize and get off his blood pressure medicine. And I believe the Jiaogulan had played a major role in that. And if we think about what we just learned about how this formula helps the body to adapt to stress, we've all seen the old comic strips where the cartoon character would get stressed out and all of a sudden he'd turn red and the steam would come out of the top of his head. Well, think about that. That's a constricted state. When we get constricted like that in the stress response, the blood pressure will go up. So if the adaptogens are helping the body to normalize more quickly, then it's going to help prevent the blood pressure from being such an issue with going out of bounds. Jiaogulan is also known for helping to get to cholesterol more in normal range. Now, cardioprotective is different than cardiovascular support. Now, cardioprotective means it's going to help sustain the heart in its ideal health. It's going to protect it from getting such a hit from stress. So a very nice component or attribute this has. Again, we talked about immune support, and this actually has some antioxidant properties as well. Eleuthro is another adaptogen that a lot of people are familiar with. You see it's a beautiful root, and in fact, any of these roots that are in the ginseng type family, and if you guys remember, I grew up with a lot of this stuff, and we had a lot of roots like this sitting around, and they look like people. And that's one of the things that was always known for. So Eleuthro is very good at helping enhancing mental acuity. And so that means the stress of maybe trying to remember things like taking a test. Or I have a lot of people that have always commented on my memory, and I do have a photographic memory, but also I would keep lists in my pockets of things I need to do because I wanted my brain space to be able to remember all the formulas that or programs I had people on, and their kids' birth dates and all these different things. And I do believe that using adaptogens like this has played in a role in helping that to get even stronger as I'm aging, whereas most people see the opposite happen. Eleuthro also protects the liver. It has antiviral properties. This is nice too, about how it helps to improve recovery time for your athletes. Or think about it for your person who's gone out and all of a sudden had to work hard all day. A lot of our farmers out building fences, or they're branding cattle, or different things like that. Those long, hard days where we're pushing ourselves physically, Eleuthro helps to bounce back from that. And then it also helps and is documented to help decrease your side effects with chemo and radiation. It's another reason that I'm very comfortable with using, and I've had a lot of people use this formula in the Vital form for when they're going through chemo. This is a testimony that actually comes out of our family. And this is something that, and I still will never forget, getting this phone call, and this is exactly what it's like. When I got a phone call from a family member, and they literally told me, could this be for real? And I asked them what, and they said, could it be for real that 3 days after starting to take this, that I could feel this much better and have this much of a difference? And I told them yes. And this was the only thing that we had changed. And they told me they were going to call this their happy pill from now on. And for 5 years now, they have never missed taking this because it was that big of a game changer for them. Schizandra, another one of our adaptogens in this formula. It's a beautiful berry. This is one of the ones I really think is beautiful. Schizandra works very good for forgetfulness. So again, we're starting to see a couple different things when it comes to cognitive abilities and memory. And again, part of this is when you reduce how stress is impacting you, it takes less of a toll on the brain. Think about it, the more you get tired physically, the harder it is to remember things. Well, if your body's bouncing back and not having the impact from the stress as much, then the brain also does not pay the price as much. This also helps to work with insomnia and with depression. I've had many people who, once they started using the Adaptable, that their insomnia would resolve itself. And they just, over time, they found that they were sleeping better than they ever had. Irritability, exhaustion, vitality, and eyesight. And these are, when we're talking about vitality, we're just talking about that part that just makes you feel alive, and that where people notice that spunk that you got. And isn't it interesting how eyesight can be impacted by some of these? And we have it in several of ours, but the Schizandra is one. Rhodiola is another absolutely beautiful adaptogen. And you can see there's something called sacred geometry. And when you look at the plants, you can see the perfect placement of all the leaves. And there just is an absolute beauty to me in how some of these plants look. Rhodiola is also known for enhancing mental and physical performance. So you're starting to see a commonality here in what these adaptogens, these 6 in particular, that were chosen to go into this formula, and why we see some of the results that we do. It's another one that is cardioprotective, protecting the heart, cold and flu prevention. And I also put on there stress and fatigue. Now, how do these go hand in hand? Well, whenever I see somebody have long-term stress, and think about people in your life, long-term stress, what do we often find? For instance, if we have a caregiver and with someone who's very ill, once that person either gets over their issue, or maybe they're caring for someone at end stage of life, once they pass, then the caretaker gets sick because of all the stress and that this has taken and impacted their body. Well, when we have enough stress and fatigue long enough, it makes the immune system more vulnerable. So again, if we can keep the body balanced and not being impacted by your stress as much, then you will have an immune system that can better do its job. Again, we see depression and endurance. This is a fantastic testimony, and I love this because it shows the other things that the Adaptable can do. They said that started Adaptable a few months ago because their hormones felt really out of balance after having their second baby. Immediately after starting it, they felt their hormones balance out. So they thought, great, goal accomplished. However, they were surprised because they found some other benefits. They had known that they had also started developing anxiety and panic attacks due to some other health issues in the family. But then they realized that those panic attacks and anxiety had subsided without them even realizing it. Another thing is they, for many years, had dealt with endometriosis and all the symptoms that come with that. Before they'd had their 2 children, they'd had to have surgery to remove the ovarian cyst and basically have a full DNC to remove the endometriosis. After a few months being on Adaptable, their symptoms began to subside. Their monthly hormonal headaches also disappeared. These are like bonus benefits that they were not expecting. And this kind of sums it up. In the 10 years that they had been taking herbal supplements, they had never experienced benefits that they got from just taking this one supplement. And this person almost could have been describing some of the things that I dealt with having had endometriosis and ovarian cyst. And I didn't have panic attacks or anxiety, but a lot of stress. And it took a lot of supplements and a couple of years to balance that out and resolve those issues, the Adaptable would have made such a big difference to have had that earlier on in my journey. And then we have ashwagandha. I wanted to point this out, this attribute of it, and that is that it helps to re-regulate the thyroid. So I want you to pay attention to that. So thyroid often can have, there's like two lobes of it, if you're aware of where it sits right there on your neck. One lobe can be overactive, the other can be underactive. And so the body, again, makes no mistakes. It's always working to balance itself out. The thyroid can get thrown off with the adrenals, the heart, they all work hand in hand. So by re-regulating, helping to give the body the opportunity to get it back into balance where it should be. When the thyroid's out of balance, we can have issues with depression, anxiety, fertility, our skin. And that's just a couple of the issues that can show up. So a lot of people are familiar with ashwagandha, and even those that have liked using ashwagandha by itself, when they take this formula with all six together, they get even more impressive results. And I know that part of it also is the quality and the concentration of the ashwagandha that we have in this formula. Nervous exhaustion. So with extreme stress, or when our nerves get frayed, think about it like a frayed wire. Just to try and make that connection to work it with electricity, it doesn't give a good connection. We have to get rid of the frayed ends, get it nice and all working together again, so that there is a good strong current that can go. Because you can get exhausted trying to get the your nutrients and things like that too, or anything. But if the connection is not good, it will exhaust you, even though you're trying to get the good thing for yourself. India, there are some studies showing how they use it in cancer protocols. It is been used historically to help address iron deficient anemia. So this is also very beneficial too, and can be very beneficial for women that are having very heavy cycles. And then for perimenopausal symptoms, because about 10 years before a woman goes into menopause, they call it perimenopause, there are things that start showing up. Having issues with how they think is one of those things that shows up, and muscle pain. And then Astragalus, another beautiful plant. All these plants in here are absolutely gorgeous, and I really enjoy the colors of them. Astragalus is very well known for being immunomodulatory. And again, all your adaptogens are, but they all also have some things that are they're really specifically good at. It is known as a tonic for stamina. Tonic is something that it's just kind of a well-rounded approach, or in this case, plant, that helps to, in general, support the stamina. And a tonic is something you can take over a long period of time without any side effects or problems for taking it. Another one that brings out that vitality. It's also a heart tonic, and something called spleen deficiency. So how do we know when we're dealing with spleen deficiency? The way that I have always paid attention is when the person loses that spark and it's just not there, they don't have any oomph. That is when the Chinese look at it and they're looking at something they call being spleen deficient. And think about it. If you've used Adaptable in the past, or have clients or family members, notice once they start using this over time that they do, you look in their eyes and you realize they're back, or they feel like they're back, or like Rachel was saying in her earlier testimony, that the clouds left. That's a good way to know that the spleen deficiency has been worked with. So now I've asked Greg if he would share some information on the St. John's wort. So Greg, do you need me to share screen with you?
Well, I do have a couple of slides.
Okay.
And so maybe I'll show those, Val, if you can make me co-host.
Asked and answered.
I really don't need to, but I just love being co-host. I'm just kidding. Let me go find him for you. I love St. John's wort because when this formula was being put together, You know, we first worked with those 6 adaptogens, and you wouldn't think, I mean, listening to what Valerie said, is anything else needed? Really? And the answer is no, really nothing else is for a formula like this in all its multiple and varied benefits. So many different objectives for the formula because it's centered around these balancers, these regulators that deal with all of the vital organs. I do love the Chinese philosophy, looking at those 6 vital organs. And Valerie might not remember this, but my first experience with an adaptogen had to do with spleen. It sounds so funny. Regulating the spleen using a couple of adaptogens, this is before we founded Solle, was the first time I saw a significant change in my allergies. So, you know, I dealt with asthma, and I had, when you have an allergy problem, you're related to digestion, you're related to immune issues, and energy is zapped. I'll just speak for myself. People talk about through COVID, how it just took their energies. For a long period of time, that's the way my first 2 months of every summer were, and 1 month of every fall. I felt like I had a fourth the energy, even if I just did everything I could to get energy. But that was my situation. It that much affected my heart, my lungs. And I always call the adaptogens, one of my nicknames for them is sort of the silent workers. I don't even know if that's a very good nickname, because they're not about suddenly I feel this heart beating faster, like my old asthma inhaler, or you know what I mean? Certain over-the-counter drugs where you feel something like that, they just normalize. It just, like Valerie, it just goes away, or it greatly decreases and the energy just feels better. That was my first experience. Do you remember that formula, spleen activator? I didn't know a thing about it, an old Chinese. Now it just has a couple of adaptogens. When we learned about them, Adaptable, there's a reason we chose those 6, and Valerie just did an awesome job showing how brilliant they are and how amazing, and they are very, very studied. But we added this other ingredient. Valerie mentioned that these same adaptogens are in Solle Vital, and the only difference in the capsule is it's a double dose, a double concentration of them in a serving. And a serving is 2, but really a serving is what you need. You have to find your serving. But in the bottle recommendation, it's a double amount of the adaptogens in Solle Vital. And as we finished our testing, and as we talked, many of you know the story of my wife, we stopped the balancing and the concentrating of these plants because they're not just the powders. They are specialized, standardized, and concentrated versions of them, as complete as we could get them. When Donna said, okay, I feel the same, just as good taking 2 capsules as I did taking these 30 some odd capsules of all the other formulas, which by the way, included that spleen formula that I had my first experience with. She was taking all of them. When this had her feeling as well as all that, we stopped. And yet she had told me there was one herb that she had used throughout her journey. Your journey's never totally over, right? But throughout the hardest part of her journey, with depression and all the related challenges that were with that. And it was St. John's wort. Now, St. John's wort is not an adaptogen. It does have some adaptogenic properties. It is not as it is portrayed. Let me just say that. If you start to Google and research St. John's wort, you will find very many confidently written, misleading statements about it. And that's the kindest way that I can say it, because we've not only used it ourselves in our family for many, many years, well before Solle, but have seen countless people using it. And so yes, St. John's wort in many countries, you can't even get it without a prescription. In this country, you have to put a certain warning on the label. By law, you'll notice there is a warning on Adaptable. That is the law. And yet the experience is vastly different. People of all ages continue to and have always used this formula from very young to very old. Donna used it for many years at the same time of medication with no adverse reaction except improvement. Now, I will say this, one of the reasons that I make the statement about St. John's wort being so important to the formula and the decision happening to add it in, even after everything we've heard from Valerie on these 6 wonderful adaptogens, is precisely because it's being combined with 6 wonderful adaptogens. That cannot be overlooked. And when you see blanket statements, there are so many variations on every plant, different extracts where they'll claim it is the plant, i.e. St. John's wort. And it's one component extracted and concentrated out of it without any of the rest of the natural balancers of the plant. From that extreme to raw powders that have barely any of the active components because they weren't processed very well, to anything in between. We do use a standardized St. John's wort. And early on, all the talk about St. John's wort was this hypericin, which is in the name. It's in the Latin name of the flower anyway. And for a long time, the understanding was that this component was what all the mood benefits were attributed to. And then came another slew of papers talking about, no, there's this other component called hyperforin. And another one that's I can't remember, it's a compound name with hyperforin in it. And those are the most important. Oh, you know something? A great variety of the components in plants, they're all important. I really, that belief is nothing but deepened through our years of soul and really seeking to use the most complete and fully concentrated extracts that we can, meaning that if we concentrate them, we concentrate all of it that you can. It is not perfect. You know, you can't, substances are so varied and different in plants, it's impossible to get every single substance the way it is in a live plant. But the trade-off that you get, you're also able to concentrate and get much more of the plant and make it reasonable for a person to use of a modest amount and see these wonderful improvements, like Valerie said, even in a day or 3 days. One of my favorite stories early on in Soul had to do with St. John's wort and Adaptable. It was a young woman. I don't even know her name. I'm actually sad to not know her name, but I know where to find her. Debbie knows her, and a friend of Debbie's named Irma in El Paso knows her. And she early on, when Soul had 5 or 6 products, shared this with this young woman who for years had not felt good, for years had not felt happy. She was, I think, 21, 22. And the reason I got to meet her is we were down visiting one weekend and we had wrapped up our meeting, we were about to leave, and one of the attendants to this, Irma had a small store and really more of an office where she would do consultations. But one of her attendants said, "Can you please stay a little longer? So-and-so it just called. She heard that you're here and she wants to meet you and thank you." I said, "Well, wow, okay, I didn't know her." And then they told me a story, how Adaptable in a very short period of time, like Valerie's family testimony, had changed everything. And this was now, I don't know, a year later. I can't remember how much period of time, but quite a period of time. And it's the whole, is this for real experience, where when they realize it's not going to subside, my body's not going to like adapt and it's not going to work anymore. No, this is strengthening your body so it can adapt as it's supposed to. So I got to see this smiling young woman who came out with this big grin and just happy face, glowing face, happy eyes, like Valerie said. It made me so happy. And all she wanted to do was thank us for the work on that formula. So for me, part of that little extra glow, that little extra spark was due to the St. John's wort. And I will tell you that. It's really a beautiful, Valerie's talked about the plants and how pretty they are. And St. John's wort really is a pretty flower. I didn't know this. Valerie probably knows this. Does anybody know how it got its name, St. John's wort? It's just because it blooms at the time of year where religiously, I can't remember if it was the birth or the death of St. John was celebrated. It just, the bloom of the plant coincided with that date. And so it became known as St. John's wort. But it is native to Europe, but it grows on a number of continents, considered a weed in many parts of the United States, sadly. That's a little bit of a reflection to our knowledge of these wonderful herbs. Used a lot as a sedative, pain relief, even rheumatic pain. That you can see some of the immune modulatory benefits that it does have in it. Valerie mentioned these things and the other adaptogens, and they do share these benefits in common with St. John's wort. But a lot of the different imbalances that come with menopause or perimenopause, St. John's wort, there are lots of studies that show it. And I was reading today a number of studies. We know that topically it greatly speeds healing of wounds. It's why it's in Solflex AC cream. For this reason, we added it. It is a toner as well for tissues. Nerve pain and all kinds and varieties of nerve damage. There are some interesting studies with that now. And I honestly don't understand the skepticism that you see from some medical reports, because it is quite an amazing plant with an excellent record and very, very safe. We have many who have been in virtually all situations in life, family situations, expecting family, and recently adding new family, and mothers using this and really mitigating issues. As for combining it with other medications, yes, it is something that works with so many of those nerve signals. And so Donna, I can just tell you our experience, Donna used it at the same time while she was dealing with that. It was never a problem for her, but she always listened to her body and was aware and used what she needed. So I do, it's not that I don't agree that St. John's wort will work on some of the same things of the medications. It just does it safely. And when you combine, sometimes people say, oh, you added this herb and you caused a problem. Well, no, the herb didn't. The drug caused the problem. And it is true. I think it's good to just, Donna, in her case, she was pretty lucky. Her doctor, she could speak pretty freely with him when she was dealing with the drug. However, the doctor was not familiar with the herbs, could not give her any counsel. The doctor wasn't educated like as Valerie is on these things. And Donna made her own choices and decisions, but simply listened and learned from that side of things. So I can't help but at least bring it up, Valerie, on that part of St. John's wort, because it becomes such a big question. But I can tell you, in the 10 years of Soul, I am not personally aware of not a single situation of any kind of problem of any kind using Adaptable. And that is one of the reasons we combined St. John's wort with all these adaptogens. It's pretty amazing when you have these great balancers.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Greg. And I do want to add, for people who may be new and first listening, whenever we're talking about using them with the medications, we do not take them in the same handful. It's going to be at least for the Adaptable and the others, we're at least keep it an hour apart and away from that. Not because they're contraindicated, but then you're getting the benefits of both like you need to. All right, let's. So have another testimony here from our family. A lot of you know my husband, Troy. A lot of people are not aware that he had suffered a traumatic brain injury as a young teen, but it was something that we didn't discover until he was about 56 years old, and they had done a scan because he'd ended up with nonstop headaches. There had been a car accident that had reactivated the issue several years previously, and once we had the traumatic brain injury diagnosis, and it was complete atrophy of both temporal lobes as a result, we were able to start putting things together. And we realized that when we had begun adding both Vital and Adaptable to his daily protocol, that's when the TBI symptoms began dramatically improving. In fact, it was such a major shift that he was actually stopped here in our little town where most everyone knows everyone, when he was walking down the street, and it was asking what was different because he looked happy. That it absolutely was a game changer. And I will tell you, I've worked with a lot of people now with traumatic brain injuries, and I've seen consistency with this type of result. And another side note, I have found that when these new situations thrown at me, either from a client or family member that I'm having to get in and learn and figure out, I always try and do the best I can, because I know without a doubt I will get multiple other people with similar situations. And so just something to keep in mind, that there will always be someone that benefits from your experience and what you learn. So who could benefit from Adaptable? Or who do you know that might be that mom that is absolutely overwhelmed, doing the best she can to keep everything together? But you know what? Kids are kids, and those, we raised 6 of them. I know what it's like. There's a chaos that goes with it, and I love the chaos, but it's still a chaos and it can wear you out. Who do you know that's pregnant? My daughters throughout their pregnancies, once we had availability of the Soul products, used Adaptable. I have more moms than I can count now that have used Adaptable and other formulas through their pregnancy with the adaptogens. And we have so wonderfully laid back children and infants as a result of that. Your military, I've been able to successfully use the Adaptable for people that were diagnosed with PTSD. Many of you know the story of our daughter who was diagnosed after being in Afghanistan. Adaptable and Vital were 2 things that I had started on when she got back. The VA told her that if she would stay on what I had her put her on, that they would not put her on medication because the results were so impressive. Who do you know, as in those teenagers that might be tuning you out? This formula is amazing for teenagers and the mood swings and the things that they get just as their body's changing and they're trying to adapt to it. The busy person at work, the athlete, otherwise, pretty much anyone can benefit from this formula in my experience. I agree with Rachel. I have just found it to be a great formula to have added into the protocol for people. You guys know that I like the Bella Health program. Adaptable is going to be an amazing complement to it. I would not hesitate a bit with adding that in. And so here's our quote I want to end with, and that is, health is not merely the absence of disease. It is the balance of mind, body, and soul. And Adaptable is phenomenal at helping to do this. So I just absolutely love that quote for this. Now, next week, we're going to talk about sharing soul and talking about the new referral code program and getting more in depth and making sure that everyone has an understanding and share different ways that they've been doing it. So I hope that you will join us. And once again, if you want to get those text notifications, there's the phone number right there. You can text the word "learn" to it, and you will get notifications roughly 15 minutes before our Monday nights begin.